Hello everybody, welcome to the county seat today. I'm your host Chad Booth. We are at the end of the legislative session as promised by our promos all week. We're sitting down for a conversation with Governor Gary Herbert to kind of get a scorecard on the legislative session and see what some of the things that he signed into law hold for Utah's future, particularly as they relate to counties. There was a lot of public land legislation this year. I mean, it started with just a couple of bills 2 or 3 years ago with 148, and we've kind of got this steamroller going on. What's your take on some of the land legislation that we looked at this year?
Well, I think there's a growing awareness of the need for states, not just Utah, but all states that have public lands to take a more assertive role in the management of those public lands. And the bills that we had passed in this session, in fact, address those issues, whether it's the management of the public lands, the ability to set aside areas that need to be conserved and protected, whose jurisdiction it is for law enforcement. All those have to do with, in fact, how can we better optimize the management of the public lands. And so I appreciate I signed all those bills into law. I think it's a step in the right direction, and I think we're going to find support from other neighboring states that have the same kind of philosophy and the same kind of issues they're trying to wrestle with.
There were two elements in that whole conversation that I thought were fairly interesting. One, that as much pushback as Utah's made about all of these expansive wilderness proposals that come from environmental groups, that we passed a state wilderness bill.
Well, again, it's been a myth that somehow that Utah and our elected leaders, our legislators, our governors have not wanted to have protection of some of our beautiful, most pristine vistas and venues that we have in this iconic landscape we call Utah. We understand the need to protect some of those places, but under the statutes of the BLM, for example, it's designed to have multiple use of those lands. Some farming, some ranching, some natural resource development, outdoor recreation, all should be able to be working together for the good of the whole. And we believe that there are some areas that ought to be, in fact, wilderness protected. And we have a mechanism where we can actually bring people together, the stakeholders of Utah, and we'll identify where those areas of wilderness protection ought to be.
The other area that I thought was of great interest is the compact bill. It says basically if we go forward on a public land exchange, that we would sign compacts with surrounding states. What kind of implications does that have?
Well, it's always better when somebody's not standing alone. If you're one lone voice in the wilderness, no pun intended, it makes it a little more difficult to get the attention of the people in Washington. The Department of Interior is the largest landowner of property in Utah. They own nearly 70%. And so having other states work with us as a compact, where you have Montana, where you have Wyoming, Idaho, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, all working in concert saying, yes, we have concerns about the overreach of the federal government. We want to have more state input, more local control, more local input on how we manage those lands, helps us in, one, getting their attention and realizing this is not just some Utah quirky thing. It really is the Intermountain West and the West, generally speaking. We need to have more input in how we manage these lands.
Does that not drag Congress into being engaged in that conversation?
Well, you're probably asking a constitutional question. We have an attorney here to tell you the ins and outs. All I know is that where we have one lone voice compared to 10 different voices working together in concert, we're much more likely to get the Department of Interior, the BLM, the Forest Service, and the Department of Agriculture to listen to what we're having to say and consider the concerns we have. It's not a matter that we're on a different page from the standpoint of what we want to have as outcomes. It's really a matter of how do we do it. There's a backlog of non-maintenance for our BLM now of probably $5 to $6 billion on the Forest Service and about $11 billion on the BLM land. So they're not managing up to their capability either. Lack of funds, whatever the reasons are. Some of our wildfires that we see here have taken place could have been prevented with better land management practices. So we're just suggesting that if we're going to be partners, we ought to be partners and not junior partners in this. It's our backyards. We understand the issues probably as well, if not better than most anybody. And so let's work together in a more collaborative fashion to make sure that we have optimal outcomes of our public lands.
Well, this is a good place to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be back with Governor Gary Herbert. We'll talk about Medicaid when we return. Stay with us.
Almost 45% of the oil produced in Utah, 7.8 million barrels, comes from Duchesne County. That oil feeds our state economy, provides job growth, and supports local business. Here in Duchesne County, we're working to make Utah an economic, cultural, and technological leader. Whether you're here for business or pleasure, Duchesne County will welcome you with open arms and invite you to explore all the beauty of the Uinta Mountains. Duchesne County, close enough for business, far enough to get away.
Making sure your food is safe. It starts on the farm and continues every step of the way, all the way to your local grocery store. So when you bring home food for your family, you do so with the peace of mind that it's safe, fresh, and nutritious. Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, the guardians of Utah's food supply and sustainable agriculture. Visit ag.utah.gov for more information.
You go through the day-to-day repeating what you did yesterday. Don't you wish you could access that piece of your life that's missing? Find the beauty, serenity, family fun, or anything else that's missing from your life in the Cedar City, Bryan Head area. Gain access to your adventure, whether it's camping, hiking, the arts, festivals, or just a getaway. Visit ScenicSouthernUtah.com for details on all the adventures that you can access in scenic Southern Utah.
Kanab, base camp for your Southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our conversation today with Governor Gary Herbert. We've covered public lands and some of the things that have happened in the legislature with that. Now let's turn our attention to Medicaid. Tell me a little bit about Utah's Medicaid plan and where we're headed with it.
Well, all federal programs have some controversy to it, particularly as we as taxpayers look at the federal government, what we would consider irresponsible behavior. They're not fiscally prudent. They spend beyond their means. They're not prioritizing correctly. And then they have the nerve to act like they're efficient in what they're doing and that there's not improvements that can be made. So I recognize the frustration. What we have proposed is an alternative to Medicaid and Medicaid expansion, meaning that we, under the Affordable Care Act, as Utah taxpayers, are being taxed a significant amount of money. These are new taxes. It's about $680 million that they will extract from Utah taxpayers to help pay for the Affordable Care Act, whether it's our medical device companies, of which we have a number of them, all the way down to tanning bed taxes and insurance taxes that you pay as an insured person with what they would consider a Cadillac type of insurance program. $680 million is going to Washington. They redirect back to what we call Medicaid expansion about $258 million. We are just simply suggesting we could spend that better in another alternative program to Medicaid expansion, which we are calling Healthy Utah. It's designed to have better outcomes, better bang for the buck, more choices for the recipient. It does require some modifications over a Medicaid program with a work requirement. So those who can work will work. And we have that as part of our temporary aid to needy families. So it's a similar program already in existence, which we're going to incorporate in our Healthy Utah plan. We also think there ought to be additional copays, and copays haven't been adjusted for many, many, many years and ought to be adjusted, as well as the ability for people based on their income and their capability to pay a little bit of the premium. So it's not just a government handout, not just a common government dole. There's more skin in the game from the recipients. We think that's better policy. And with more choices, you're going to have better outcomes as the recipients will receive, more choices and better access to health care than they would get through a Medicaid program. So we believe this is responsible, it's practical, it addresses the taxpayers' needs and is respectful of their paying for the costs. And the question for most of us, who could spend the money better, the federal government or the state of Utah? I would submit to you that the state of Utah can spend it better than people 3,000 miles away.
Would part of this plan, how does private insurance work into this? Would this fund be redirected to pay premiums on behalf of Utahns that qualify into a private system?
For those who qualify, and there's about 111,000 people we believe will be there that go from up to 133% of poverty. If you qualify, then you'll be able to get some credits and subsidy for your insurance premium. So you'll talk to your insurance provider. He'll say, we have 20 different plans for you. You can pick one that suits your family the best or your individual needs the best. And if the premium, whatever it is, you may have to pay $20 a month of that premium. So you'll pay something, again, it's about 2% of your annual income. So that's about $15,500 for an individual. Be a little bit more than that for a family, but it'll be on a sliding scale based on your ability to pay as a certain percent. So again, it's fair, and it will allow people to say, I'm paying and contributing. They'll feel better about themselves, and they're going to get better coverage and better access and more choice.
With the Medicaid expansion, they were looking at losing some of the block grants that have funded mental health programs. The compensation was supposed to be that mental health coverage would show up in the Medicaid expansion as part of the law. How is that going to impact the counties that are engaged in mental health services?
Well, under the Healthy Utah plan, as an alternative to Medicaid expansion, we will have the same dollars coming back originally generated by the Utah taxpayers. So that $258 million come from our people. It'll come back to us into the Healthy Utah program. And as part of that program, we will pass that money through, similar to what would have been done under Medicaid expansion, to the counties for their mental health programs. So it really won't mean much change or difference at all, just somebody else writing out the check.
Then one other question on the expansion. Is it retroactive? In other words, currently we've got a Medicaid program that's below the poverty level that we're participating in. In your talks in Washington, have you been saying, okay, let's take the whole ball of wax and put it into the Healthy Utah initiative, or is it just that gap between the existing Medicaid program and that 133%?
Well, the proposal you're talking about is called partial expansion. We've actually proposed that to the Department of Health. It was rejected a few months ago, probably 6 months ago. And South Dakota just proposed it again here about 2 months ago, and they were turned down. So we know that partial expansion is not acceptable. There are some parameters that they say we won't break. So for us to go up to 133% of poverty, which is 111,000 people in the state of Utah, and that means individuals making up to $15,500 a year or less as who would qualify. So the proposal we have is really for that group of people, 111,000 Utahns. We would call the poor or the working poor as a kind of a term, will be covered under the Healthy Utah plan.
It's not just a GAP program.
It's not just what they call the donut hole people that aren't getting anything. It is those and up to 133% of poverty. And that's just what the federal government is willing to do. Again, it's generated, it's our money. The question again is who's going to spend it? The federal government through a Medicaid program, or the state of Utah through a Healthy Utah program, which has a whole different set of parameters, and we think has better parameters, better principles, it's a better policy, and will give better outcomes to the recipients. By the way, it's a 3-year pilot program. So we're going to have the Department of Health monitor in very much detail the outcomes of the health of the recipients. So we'll find out how is it working. Is it working well for the people that participate? And how are their health outcomes? Also monitoring the federal governments, their ability and their willingness to keep their commitments and honor their commitments with us as a partner in this Healthy Utah program. And lastly, we'll monitor our own state budget to make sure we understand what is the cost of it now and what will be the cost going forward. So at the end of this 3-year pilot program, we'll analyze the data. I expect we'll make some modifications, some nuanced changes, and move ahead in a better way. But again, we have the opportunity under a pilot program to embrace it and continue on, or to reject it altogether after 3 years.
You know, it's kind of interesting because I noticed recently in a newspaper article, now all of a sudden you have Wyoming and Idaho's attention who said, hey, we're not going to mess with this. What brought them back to the table?
They like the idea of flexibility. What we don't like is the one-size-fits-all mentality that comes out of Washington, D.C. We know our people better. We know our unique challenges politically and culturally. In Utah, for example, we're the youngest population in the nation, 29.2 years of age, compared to Arizona, which is one of the oldest populations in America. We have different health care needs. Why would we think that the same program would work equally well in both states? It won't. So states are looking at us, Tennessee, Indiana, Arkansas, Iowa, Montana, Wyoming, Nevada. And if we can get the flexibility we're talking about, they're saying, hey, that would maybe work for us too. So we're kind of on the cutting edge of this negotiation here. If we can get what we're looking to get here with maximum flexibility in a block grant form, I think you'll find other states will say, well, that will work for us too.
Well, I think you're a good sport to share your playbook with them.
Well, again, it's about people. It's about helping people and respecting the taxpayers. At the end of the day, that's the 2 points we need to keep uppermost in our mind.
Well, we're going to take a break here from the county seat. We'll come back. We'll talk about gas tax when we return on our program in just a minute.
If you're looking for the center of the universe, well, good luck. Now, if you're looking for the center of the off-road universe, look no further than Paiute County. Hundreds of miles of trails turn your day of riding into a week, maybe even a month. Heck, a lifetime wouldn't be enough. Take off right from downtown Marysville or Circleville and experience fall colors that rival the most famous destinations in the world. There will never be a better time to ride the Paiute Trail than right now. Explore Paiute County and discover the magic and beauty of the land where the rainbow ends.
I lived in Phoenix and then down in Orange County in California, and I met a small town girl and she brought me home. Just the smaller community that makes you feel like when you go somewhere you know everybody. You know, the sporting programs, the dance events, all these kinds of things, you run into people you know and that care about you and your family. And that makes it just a wonderful place to have little ones like this.
Isn't it time you found the balance you've been looking for? Uinta County, Utah.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our conversation today with Governor Herbert. We now want to take up the issue of gasoline tax and transportation. This has been a growing concern in the counties that their ability or their portion of gas taxes coming back for county road maintenance and construction is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And some of the counties at a point where they're almost at a point where they're going to rip up asphalt and go back to graded gravel because they can't afford to keep them up. What's your take on the legislature? They didn't get anything really accomplished this session.
Well, it's always been an issue. I remember when I was a county commissioner in Utah County, and the concerns we had is we couldn't build really any new roads. All of the money we're getting back under the gasoline tax was going into mostly all maintenance. And so things haven't changed a whole lot. They still get their proportionate amount of money for the B and C roads for the cities and the counties. The need to have additional monies for our transportation needs is one that's real and it's acute. This past September at a transportation summit, we addressed that very issue head on and said, hey, we're going to have billions of dollars more over the next 25 years to take care of our road construction needs, our transportation needs, and we are not on a trajectory right now to produce enough revenue to pay for the demands of not only construction, but just the maintenance of the roads we've built already. So I expect you're going to see some significant discussion over this next year, culminating probably in the 2015 legislative session about how do we pay for our transportation needs going forward? What is the pathway to address these growing transportation needs in the second fastest growing state in America? And whether that's an adjustment to the gasoline tax, sales tax utilization, or a hybrid combination, or letting local options for the counties or the cities take precedent, where they can have an additional tax themselves on a local option basis. Probably more than one way to skin the cat, but I expect you're going to find that's going to be a very significant discussion in our upcoming legislative session.
There are two issues that seem to be of concern as you sit and you look at the landscape. One, inflation is eating at some of that gas tax because the costs are going up, and as the fuel costs go up, because it's a fixed dollar amount, it becomes a smaller percentage. And secondly, cars are getting better gas mileage than 10 years ago. So how do you address those two
well,
things?
You're clearly identified it, Chad, exactly. It's a double whammy. We haven't kept up with just the cost of inflation. Our purchasing power of our 24.5 cents is not what it was today, what it was, 15 years ago when we last had the increase, approximately. And so what do you do about that? Plus, our cars are more efficient. So we're putting more vehicle miles on the roads and yet producing less and less revenue, proportionally speaking. So again, that's part of the challenge, and what the solution is going to be is yet to be determined. You can adjust the gasoline tax. Hey, let's just increase the gasoline tax 10 cents to recapture inflation that we lost. Maybe there's another way with a sales tax. Maybe it ought to be indexed so that we have up and down. Most people don't like it to be too volatile, so that's going to be the debate. There are proposals that we had this session that were not embraced, but at least food for thought as far as ways that we can address this ongoing need for transportation.
Very good. We'll take a break here on the county seat. We'll come back for our wrap-up. We might briefly touch on air quality and get the governor's last thoughts. Stay with us.
Unlimited opportunity for adventure? It's all about knowing where to look. ATV adventures, rock crawling events, art festivals, and wildlife events. The opportunities are limitless. Pick your adventure in Millard County.
Landscapes as diverse as the people who venture to find them await. All you have to do is find a place to begin. Moab, Utah, in Grand County, where adventure begins. Color, it's something that can be seen. But have you ever wanted to reach out and touch it? Experience it. In San Juan County, Utah, color comes to life like nowhere else on earth. Color can be more than an abstract. Color can be your gateway to a new world. Visit San Juan County and explore the past, present, and future in a way that you've only dreamed of. San Juan County. Color your experience.
Have you ever wanted to recreate the world around you? Add some excitement, culture, adventure? Well, there's no need to remake the world when that perfect combination already exists. Just remember 4 words. Welcome to Weber County. In Ogden, you'll find everything you're looking for, from the top of Powder Mountain to the restaurants of our revitalized downtown. Ogden, Utah, mountain to metro and everything in between. Visit Ogden.com.
Welcome back to the county seat, our final segment of the show. We wanted to touch on air quality. It's summertime, and so it's not as visible to people that there's an air quality issue going on. But you recently traveled to Air Quality Central for the entire hemisphere in Mexico City. Tell me about the status of what you see our vision for air quality in the coming year.
Well, fortunately for us, our problem is not as acute as Mexico City's. A population of 9 million people inside the incorporated area of Mexico City, 22 million in the metropolitan area. A city that has 9 million, and every day 7 million more move into the city to work. So you can imagine the congestion. I mean, it's a motorized city, as they would call it. and their pollution is significant. We learn from them, and we learn what's working and what maybe wouldn't work in Salt Lake City and the Wasatch Front. There's a growing awareness of the air quality issues that need to be addressed, not just for health issues, which is certainly the #1 reason to be concerned about air quality, but also for our economic opportunity. We won't have businesses grow here or move here if we don't take care of the air quality issues. The good news for the public at large is the air quality is getting better. It's better now than it was a decade ago. It's probably by cut in half the pollution that we had in the air in the last decade. But it's still not enough. We are on trajectory to be in compliance under the Clean Air Standards in 2019. We have work to do. Industry is putting up hundreds of millions of dollars to help with their best available technology and doing their part. Unfortunately for most of us, though, that right now 60% nearly of all the pollution we have on these inversion days comes out of tailpipes. So we've got to do a better job of mass transportation, using more front runner mass transit, van pools, eliminating our trips on red air days. We've also proposed eliminating wood burning during these inversion times, which is burning an hour of a fireplace is the equivalent of somebody driving from here to St. George and back again, as far as the amount of pollution that puts into the air. So there's some things we can do better, and we also have a Clean Air Action Team, which is designed to take input from the public. Everybody's got an idea, they'll listen, and they'll analyze cost to benefit, does it make sense, and that will develop new policy, new legislation that will need to be passed, which will help us all working together to clean up the air.
Didn't we put some money into that in this legislative session?
Significant amounts of money. Absolutely have some grant money that for people who have got small businesses that need some help and maybe transitioning. For those who have wood burning stoves and fireplaces, money there to help them transition to propane or natural gas to help us get off of the wood burning. And so there's money there. We've put money in place for to change our transportation system with school buses to go into cleaner burning school buses. We're also embracing new automobiles under the Tier 3 program under the Clean Air Act to bring in better burning burning automobiles. So again, the tailpipe emissions, as well as working with our refineries and others on Tier 3 fuels, a cleaner burning fuel, which is going to be in our future. So there's a lot of all hands on deck here in trying to find the solution to deal with our own unique air quality, airshed challenges here in Utah. And again, we all know about the inversions. There's not much we can do about the meteorology and the topography, but there is things we can do about making sure we put less and less pollution into the air.
Well, you know, Governor, when we sat down for this conversation and I went over the list of topics, you said we need an hour, and you're sure right, because we've run out of time. Our half hour is gone.
Another show.
That's right. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for inviting us into your homes on the county seat. Remember, local government is where your life happens. Become part of the process and the solutions. Stay tuned, share this with your friends, make your comments on Facebook. We'll look for you next week. If you like this video, then we invite you to subscribe to our channel, The County Seat. You can do that here. And we invite you to share with your friends. We also invite you to get all the latest up-to-date information by following us on our social media channels. And if all else fails, make sure that you watch The County Seat Sunday morning at 8:30 right here on ABC4 Utah.